Hi again. So I've mentioned in the past that I really enjoy reading middle grade books. I've talked about a few of them a couple of times, so I kind of just wanted to share some of my favorites within the genre. And the first one that I wanted to talk about is called Long Lost by Jacqueline West. I read this book back in 2023. I just can't remember when within the year I read this book. And to just read the inside flap, Fiona Crane has just said goodbye to her home and friends and everything she knows, all because of her older sister Arden. To be closer to Arden's figure skating club, their family has moved to Lost Lake, a tiny, unwelcoming town of old houses, old forests, and old secrets. The only bright spot is Lost Lake's library, a rambling mansion that was once home to a wealthy local family. That's where Fiona finds the book. The book with the soft green leather cover, the gilded title, and the drawings of a forest with reaching hands and staring eyes. The book about another pair of sisters who lived long ago, in a town eerily like Lost Lake. The book that doesn't exist, at least not if you ask anyone about it. But Fiona knows the book is real, and it's leading her towards something. Something that was lost long ago. Something that has been waiting to be found. Maybe it's been waiting just for her. So it's been a while since I read this book, but I know for a fact the main reason why I really enjoy it is because I can totally feel for Fiona. I completely understand her struggles and frustrations in moving to a new house, a new town, a new school where she'll eventually have to make a bunch of new friends. I went through that when I was younger, and I feel like the emotions that come with such a big change like that are really well translated with Fiona and her feelings. Another thing that I like about this book is the conflict between Fiona and her older sister Arden. I feel like at the beginning of the book, they would definitely argue at times because, again, Fiona kind of has this resentment against Arden because they had to move to this new town because of her. But throughout the book, they definitely talk a lot of things out. They share their feelings, and eventually they do kind of repair their sisterhood relationship to each other. And it also kind of intertwines with the story that Fiona found about the two sisters who lived a long time ago. And I find that I really gravitate towards middle grade books that have a plot where the character is moving to a new town and they kind of struggle to really acclimate to this new area. I feel like this is a book that I want to reread in the future because, as I mentioned, I read this back in 2023. I remember a lot of the big picture stuff in this book, but there's still a lot of smaller details that I kind of want a refresher on. This next favorite middle grade that I have is called Cruzita and the Mariacheros by Ashley Granillo. So this is actually an ARC, as you can tell by the uncorrected proof not for sale label. And on the back, it has the national marketing campaign information. So I have mentioned this organization before. I signed up for this book over with Hear Our Voices over on Book Instagram. I read this book back in February 2024, and then in March 2024, I ended up choosing to pick out my favorite quotes from this book, and I also did a review for it as well. And to just read the back, Cruzita is going to be a pop star. All she has to do is win a singing contest at her favorite theme park and get famous. But she can't go to the theme park this summer. Instead, she has to help out at her family's bakery, which has been struggling ever since Tio Chuy died. Cruzita's great uncle poured his heart into the bakery, the family legacy, and now that he's gone, nothing is the same. When Cruzita's not rolling uneven tortillas or trying to salvage rock-hard conchas, she has to take mariachi lessons, even though she doesn't know how to play her great-grandpa's violin and she's not fluent in Spanish. At first, she's convinced her whole summer will be a disaster, but as she discovers the heart and soul of mariachi music, she realizes that there's more than one way to be a star and more than one way to carry on a legacy. So something that I didn't know until I read this book is that mariachi school is like a thing people go to. I always thought you can be in a mariachi band if it was like through word of mouth or if you got lessons from somebody who knew somebody. I thought it was like this exclusive thing. I had no idea that there were schools for that, so that was something that I thought was pretty cool. So one of the reasons why I really enjoy this one is because I can really connect with Cruzita in not knowing Spanish all that well. My Spanish is pretty bad. It has always been really bad. I feel like no matter how hard I try, it just never sticks with me. And the thing is, I don't really try to practice speaking it all that well because reading it, I can do pretty good. Writing it is kind of okay. My biggest struggle is speaking Spanish. And I know in order to get better at speaking Spanish, I actually have to put in the effort to speak Spanish. But I just feel so embarrassed by the fact that I don't know the language that well that I kind of don't want to try because I don't want to feel embarrassed and I don't want everybody to know that I don't speak Spanish. But then it comes into that other way of like, well, the only way I will get better is to try and speak it. But then the other way is like, well, I feel really embarrassed speaking it because my accent is bad, my pronunciations are that well. So it's like this back and forth that I deal with constantly. I'm an adult now. I know I have to speak it in order to get better at it. It's just something that has always brought me just a lot of shame and embarrassment. And I feel like if I read Cruzita and the Mariacheros when I was younger and kind of at the height of how embarrassed that I felt, I feel like that would have helped me feel better. And I feel like it honestly would have given me a boost of confidence and motivation to actually try and learn the language. I feel like if I saw Cruzita here and I thought, oh, she looks like me, she's also like me because she doesn't know Spanish all that well, maybe it's not going to be as bad as I think it is, because she definitely tries. And even though you know and read that she still struggles with her Spanish and singing and speaking, she still tries. And I think that's something I need to implement into my own life. Something I also really liked about this book is we read a child basically mourning a family member that she really, really loved. I feel like with the books I'm going to mention, that's not really a topic of conversation within the plot. And I feel like the way it's written with Cruzita and the Mariacheros, I just felt so sad for her. I feel like I mentioned this in my review as well. So Cruzita's Tío Chuy died. I believe it was her great uncle. And there are times throughout the book where she feels like she can sense him. She feels like the wind that's blowing is him trying to talk to her. She feels like the birds that are singing and chirping are him trying to communicate with her. Sometimes she feels like she can hear his voice. She just senses him all throughout the book. So we see her just mourning and grieving his loss. And it's really, really sad, especially because all of the adults in Cruzita's life, I feel like they were also going through a hard time because he passed away. They were trying to save his bakery. But I feel like they weren't really talking about their feelings all that often. So they were kind of like snapping at each other. And they would often snap at Cruzita. And while it's easy to get mad at them because they're adults, they shouldn't be snapping like that at a child, I also understand that they were also grieving somebody that they loved. And at the end, the adults do apologize to Cruzita for acting that way. And they explain they just miss Tío Chuy so much. They don't know what to do. They're having a hard time. So just reading a child going through grief and everyone just kind of working together on like sort of reaching peace about their family member's death, that was something that I found to be so beautiful. There's also another element to Cruzita and the Mariacheros that I don't know how to like put into words perfectly. I don't know how to explain it because in the back it says Cruzita wants to be a pop star and she thinks she's going to be a pop star by winning this singing competition at the theme park that she wants to go to. And she thinks that's going to make her famous. That's going to give her all this money that she needs to save her bakery. And from that, I feel like you kind of get reminded of the innocence that children have because she's, I think, 11 years old, more or less. And of course, children have big imaginations. They have big dreams and they think if they come up with this plan to achieve their dreams, everything is going to fall into place, but it just doesn't work like that. And I feel like that's kind of the same with Cruzita here because she would talk about going to the theme park, enter the singing competition. She was picking what song that she would sing for the competition and how she would go viral on like TikTok and stuff. And you kind of have this moment where you're like appreciating that there's still childlike innocence with her despite her going through a loss of a family member, her going through like this sort of tension with her family. I'm not sure if I'm really explaining it that well, but it's overall a book that I really enjoyed reading because there was a lot more to it than her just wanting to be a pop star, but instead taking mariachi lessons while also trying to help her family sort of revive her Tío Chuy's bakery. So with this next book that I have, it's definitely a favorite within the middle grade genre, but it's also one of my favorite books in general. And that one is called Shine On, Luz Véliz by Rebecca Balcácer. I read this last year in June 2024, and to read the inside flap, Luz Véliz is a soccer star, or rather, she was a soccer star. With her serious knee injury, it's unlikely she'll be back on the field anytime soon. But without soccer, who is she? Even her dad treats her differently now, like he doesn't know her, or worse, like he doesn't even like her. When Luz discovers she has a knack for coding, it feels like a lifeline to a better self. If she can just ace the May showcase, she'll not only skip a level in her coding courses and impress Miss Freeman and intriguing, brilliant Trevor, she'll have her parents cheering her on from the sidelines. But someone, is about to enter the Véliz's life. And when Solana arrives, nothing will be the same ever again. The largest reason why I love this book is because of the character Solana. I know the inside flap just says that she enters the Véliz family life and nothing will be the same ever again. What makes Solana just such a great character that made me really love this book is her backstory. I won't say what her backstory is because it's definitely something that I don't want to spoil, and it's something that I just totally was not expecting from this book. This book talks about soccer, coding, her relationship with her parents. Solana's backstory just completely comes out of left field. It sort of brought a darker tone to the book because, again, it was just a backstory that I was not expecting. I'm kind of going in circles because I keep wanting to say what the backstory is, but I don't want to spoil it. And it's also really sad because Solana is a character, she's really like happy-go-lucky, cheerful, positive. And on her first day at Luz's school, she makes such a really good impression on all of her classmates that her first day at the new school just goes by in a breeze. And to know that that's what her character is like, this happy-go-lucky little girl, but is also carrying like this super dark and sad backstory to her, it was just so impressive to me how the author was able to tie everything into that one character as well as Luz's story. I was completely stunned when I read who Solana was and where she was coming from, and I feel like that's just one of the main reasons why I really love this book. I also really love this book because it talks about girls in STEM. It talks about Luz thinking soccer is the end all be all, and then when she hurts herself, she's kind of losing who she is as a person. She's sort of discovering other things that she may like. And when she finds coding, she kind of learns that soccer isn't the only thing that exists in the world. She can have other interests, and it's really cool to see her explore all of these other interests. She also ends up talking a lot to her neighbor who helps her with coding and trying to prepare for the May showcase. So that was another really cool relationship that we have in this book because her neighbor is like an older man. He's like a grandpa. So it was just really cool to see Luz not only form this relationship with Solana and Luz kind of learning how to re-navigate this relationship with her parents, she's also forming this friendship with her neighbor who is a little bit older. So it kind of shows you just the beauty of talking to so many different people and what you can learn from so many different people. I also really enjoy when books have like extra things to them, like sort of like mixed media. But with this book, it has Luz and Solana's inspiration board. So there's different quotes that really inspire them. And then there's 2 recipes. This one is for chilaquiles and this one is for Guatemalan hot chocolate. So I believe the author is Guatemalan because Luz and her family are Guatemalan, or at least I believe her dad is from Guatemala and her mom is not. So, I mean, just to get back to this, I really love when books incorporate recipes and music and other things from other cultures. And I kind of thought about making this Guatemalan hot chocolate. I haven't yet, but it just sounds really delicious. And it's just an extra thing about this book that I really love and why it's my favorite, not just because it's middle grade, but also just in general. So with this next book, I already talked about it in my favorites from January 2025 to June 2025, and that is The Real Wish by Yamile Sayed Mendez. This one is also an ARC, as you can see right here with the label. I did this for Hear Our Voices over on Instagram again. I love all the books that they have. I love helping them with their book tours, and I just love participating where I can. I read this back in April 2025. This has ballet, Irish dancing, bullying, making new friends, losing friends as a child and as an adult. And I actually felt really bad for Flor because at one point, I believe before her panic attack happened, she had a lot on her plate, and you can kind of feel all of the stress that she's going through. And it's sad because I'm pretty sure she's supposed to be 11 years old, maximum 13. It was something pretty young because other than it being middle grade, I'm pretty sure when I read how old she was and I got to that part of her feeling so stressed with everything that she has on her plate, I was just so surprised. So she was trying to focus on ballet. Her teacher for ballet was like really strict and a perfectionist and would often she would criticize Flor and give her feedback on how to do better because, again, she was a perfectionist. And Flor was still going to school. And I think she was also just struggling to stay on top of her studies. So she was focusing on ballet, on doing well in school. And then her parents would tell her that she needs to focus on all these other things. And I know at one point it kind of just like overcame her and she was feeling so stressed. I actually tabbed it, I'm realizing. So it's chapter 6, page 41, and the passage goes, "The teacher said school should be my priority. Madame Sophie said there was nothing more important than the ballet. I was in the middle, pulled in all directions." I mean, that's just one short passage, but I know there's somewhere in here where she kind of goes into a little bit more detail about that. And I actually found it again. It's on page 66. And this passage goes, "Little by little, the gravity of what had happened started to sink in. Now I had time for homework, but not the energy or the desire to do anything. School was school. Every day and after the final bell, I stayed late to catch up with my counselor so I could pass 6th grade. I was the opposite of a success story. I was the main character in a cautionary tale about the risks of not being up to a task so many others could do without a problem." So I guess that part was maybe a little bit after the panic attack, or maybe nearing it more or less. But either way, just hearing her feel so stressed and frustrated to just stay afloat with so many things, I felt so sad because, again, she's like 11, maximum 13. 11-year-olds or 13-year-olds should not be going through that much stress. And I felt so sad reading her feel so pulled in like so many different directions. It also helped me with my anxiety. I started doing the grounding technique in my everyday life, so that was something really helpful. And because of all of these components to The Real Wish, that is why it's definitely one of my favorite middle grade books. So these last two books that I have, they're actually graphic novels and they're part of a series. The first book is called Tales of the Feathered Serpent, Rise of the Halfling King, which is book number 1. And then book number 2 is Tales of the Feathered Serpent, The Hero Twins, and the Magic of Song, both written by David Bowless and both illustrated by Charlene Bowless. So I also read these for Hero Voices over on Instagram. The book tour that I did was only supposed to be for The Hero Twins and the Magic of Song, but they were also sending out book number 1 too, so that was really cool. To read the back for Rise of the Halfling King, it says, "A prophecy predicts that a young boy, half human and half mystical being, will defeat the evil king and lead the kingdom back to justice. But can Siam pass the 3 impossible tasks the king sets out for him?" The first in a new middle grade graphic novel series that explores ancient Mesoamerican myths and legends. And then the second book that I did the book tour for, The Hero Twins and the Magic of Song, the back says, which by the way, my pronunciations will be absolutely terrible. "In the age of Maya demigods, 2 carefree brothers are called to Xibalba, land of the dead. When they fail to return to the sea-ringed world above, one Hunapu's firstborn sons are raised by their grandmother. Below in Xibalba, one Hunapu meets the rebellious Ladyblood, and their love leads to twin sons, destined to restore balance to the cosmos, though they might need some trickster magic to survive the cruelty of their older brothers." Adapted from author David Bowless's retellings and translations of essential pre-Columbian texts like the Popol, the Tales of the Feathered Serpent series brings indigenous Mesoamerican stories alive for young readers. I thought these were so cool. I'm super interested in myths and legends, but also when it comes to like Mesoamerican myths and legends, I just find them to be really interesting and I like learning about them. And I like with these 2 books, you learn about these myths and legends through a graphic novel series. I think the pictures really pull you into what things could have possibly looked like. And also with this book, what I really enjoyed is here at the beginning, the characters are displayed and they're separated into different categories. So there's the animals, the demigods of destruction and chaos, as well as the demigods of creation and order and their allies. I like that it has the pictures of everybody, what their name is, who they are, and how they're related to other people. So that was something that was really handy. I mean, eventually when you are reading the graphic novel, you can kind of get a feel for everybody without needing to reference this. So that was something that I really enjoyed. In the back, it has like this note from the author. I like that he gives context to this graphic novel series. And it begins with, "When the Spanish invaded Mesoamerica, their priests and soldiers ended up destroying thousands of codices, books in which the stories and history of indigenous peoples, Maya, Nawa, Mixtec, had been carefully preserved. That destruction means that their descendants and the rest of humanity have been robbed of knowledge and lore, but not all of it, because in many communities, the old sacred stories were memorized and recited at special moments. So many of the most vital parts of their past were kept alive even as the invaders imposed a new language, religion, and culture, as well as a writing system, the Roman alphabet." I like when history like that is included to the book because it helps me gather context to it. I also learned a couple of things when I was in school. I'm pretty sure I had a couple of classes that mentioned the Popobol. I don't remember because it's been so many years at this point. So when I saw that Hear Our Voices was offering this book as a book tour to do with them, I just wanted to jump at the chance, and I'm glad they did because they were really nice to send both books as well. And I believe with this series, there's going to be more. It mentions book 1 and book 2, and then there's book 3, The Hero Twins in the Realm of Fright, as well as book 4, Princess Hapunda and the Lake. So these were just an interesting read. I don't have anything like this, I believe, other than these two, obviously. So I was really excited to read these. And they're also just some of my favorite middle grade reads. So these two graphic novels were the last ones that I wanted to mention for my favorite middle grade books. I thought about talking about Percy Jackson and the Olympians because that was a series that I read this year. I actually still haven't finished the last book. It's Percy Jackson and the Olympians, Wrath of the Triple Goddess, The Senior Year Adventures, book number 2. I was supposed to read that back in July, but I just kept not I had the time, but I kept putting it off, and I think the reason why I keep putting it off is because it's the last book in the series and I don't want it to finish. But the reason why I'm not going to include Percy Jackson in this video is mainly because I have talked about it already a couple of times, and I kind of wanted to shine the light on all of the other books that I mentioned for this one. I really only started reading middle grade, I think back when I read Long Lost in 2023. Maybe years ago I read middle grade. I know I read Lemony Snicket, A Series of Unfortunate Events, but that was like years ago. So it's been quite some time since I had even picked up a middle grade book. And I think some of the reasons why I really like that genre is because sometimes it's a really light read, and I feel like sometimes I just want something really light and happy compared to the other things that I read. And I think some other reasons just kind of include like when I read a book and I can really connect with the main character. I don't know, I kind of feel like my inner child is kind of healing. And again, with Cruzita and the Mariacheros, if I had read that book when I was younger, I think my mindset on feeling embarrassed that I don't know Spanish, that would have changed. So I feel like a lot of these books were just ones that I wish I had when I was a little bit younger. And I think another reason why I like middle grade is kind of it reteaches you understanding, it reteaches you empathy, kind of like with The Real Wish when Florencia was kind of really struggling with keeping up with everything, catching up with homework, doing well in ballet. I think I just really felt for her, and I really felt bad for her. I just wanted her to have a moment of peace. And I think it teaches you how to be more understanding because some of the parents in these books, they were really testing my patience. And I know a lot of them were also going through pretty hard things, especially with Cruzita and the Mariacheros. They lost their family member. They're all trying their best to revive the bakery to what it was because a lot of the people in the town were kind of saying since the passing of Theo Chuy, the bakery just isn't the same. So they lost a lot of business because the bread wasn't coming out the same way when he would make them. And I feel like because now I know how much grief the parents were going through, it still wasn't right for them to like get angry with Cruzita and lash out at her as much as they were. They did apologize, and I feel like that kind of shows you that you should have a little bit more understanding with other people. And I'm sure there's other reasons why I really enjoy middle grade books, but those are the only reasons that I could come up with at the moment, because when I was going through all of my books with the ones that I picked out, and when I would think about what the book was about, what I liked about it, it kind of came to me of why I liked those books. I think that is all that I wanted to mention today about my favorite middle grade books. And I guess to address the elephant in the room, I am in front of a completely different bookshelf. I'm not like in a new environment because my IKEA bookshelf is like right there. I was kind of getting tired of sitting in front of my IKEA bookshelf, and I also moved quite a few things around because I gave away about 84 books, and then I got 24 new books in, so there's like a big gap in my IKEA bookcase. And there's also a few gaps in like other random areas of my bookcases. Like this shelf, it's filled with books, but it's not like super tight, so that kind of has a loose section. I know another bookshelf kind of has the same thing where it's kind of loose like this. And I kind of just wanted to move in front of here because I like how I decorated this bookshelf, especially with the Halloween Town decoration that I have in the back. My IKEA bookshelf looks nice, but there's right now a big gap that you can see that's kind of just not filled with anything. So I kind of just wanted to try something new and actually have a bookcase and bookshelves actually filled with book and not like have this gaping empty space in front of me. I believe that is everything that I had for today. I would like to know if you like reading middle grade books or if you have read any of the books that I mentioned today and what you thought of them. Thank you so much for listening to me today, and I hope that I see you next time.